Welcome back to Panda Audiobooks. We've crossed the 200 chapter mark, and the world of Jian Wushuang will never be the same. In our last episode, Wushuang emerged from the grave of the ancient gods after a legendary victory over the Iron Blood General. He is no longer just a swordsman, he is the living embodiment of a primordial legacy that the divine sovereigns have spent eons trying to erase. Today, we march on the capital. Chapters 201 through 205 follow Wushuang as he begins his journey toward the Eclipse Pillar, the heart of the sovereign's power. But the road is blocked by the Sword Maidens of the Eclipse, a group of elite female warriors who use a unique mirror sword style designed to reflect a cultivator's own power back at them. Wushuang must find a way to strike without being struck by his own shadow. The siege begins now. Chapter 201 starts right away. Chapter 201. Be My Protector. Jiu Yang, Zhong Kong, you two have been in discord for a long time, and this time, in the Sky Valley battle, you two also led two different teams and took separate actions. But now, you've gathered together. Something must have happened, just tell me. Ling Xueyu walked towards them with a slight smile. Jiu Yang and Zhong Kong looked at each other and smiled with resignation. Then they briefly told him the identity of Yang Zishuan. Yang Tian? You mean Yang Tian, who ranks first in the bounty list? Ling Xueyu was also astonished at first, but then he smiled. No wonder you chose to join together. But it seems that you didn't get much from the team of the Qianzong dynasty. Both of Jiu Yang and Zhong Kong countenances turned serious. It is quite a shame that the combination of the two teams from our Cosmos Empire could do nothing to a team from a small empire. Ling Xueyu sneered. But that's okay, it provides me with a chance to perform. Above the void, the monarchs from the 12 dynasties and the experts from the old sects were discussing the previous battle. The breath that woman burst out, is she from that place? It seems she is. Only people from that place can use such a special skill. What's more, from the strength of her breath, she has a high position there. Why did she, someone from that place, take part in the easternmost hunting of our 12 northwestern dynasties? Who knows? Knowing Su Ru's background, the experts were all surprised. This time, Qianzong dynasty's disciples are at a rather high level. One owns the high heaven technique and can drive heavenly qi, and another one comes from that place. Both of them can be considered true, peerless geniuses. Compared to them, their leader, Jian Wushuang, performed quite ordinarily in the Sky Valley battle. Yes, the battle had lasted for so long, but Jian Wushuang showed no improvement in his strength. I used to be optimistic about him as he's still very young, but now compared with those two geniuses, he's much weaker. Mr. Ling Tian, you are so visionary. Yes, Mr. Ling Tian looked down on Jian Wushuang since the beginning. Some experts from the old sects were flattering Mo Lingtian. Glancing down at Jian Wushuang, Mo Lingtian sat on the chair and sneered coldly. Other geniuses mostly gained a few improvements as the battle went on. In his team, all the members except him gained improvements in both essence realm and cultivation. After the continuing slaughter, however, his strength remained the same. He made no progress after the continuing slaughter. Is it really that he's a genius? Ridiculous. In our wilderness sword sect, even a disciple whose job is to sweep the floor is much more talented than him. Mo Lingtian kept being dismissive of Jian Wushuang all along. During the whole battle, the only one he appreciated was Ling Xueyu. He's not bad. Mo Lingtian looked down at Ling Xueyu. He was able to comprehend 3 sword essences at the same time, and what's more, one of them was the sword essence of brightness, which is very rare. It's quite good for him to combine the 3 sword essences at this age. In our sect, he can be considered barely qualified to be a core disciple. At first, Mo Lingtian didn't intend to choose any disciples for the wilderness sword sect, but recently, after watching Ling Xueyu's performance in the Sky Valley, he slightly changed his mind. In Sky Valley, after fighting with the experts of the Cosmos Empire, all members of Jian Wushuang's team sat down on the ground to restore their spiritual power. Little sister, Jian Wushuang looked at Su Ru and said, "Thanks a lot. If it weren't you, we would have had no hope in surviving under the siege of the two teams from the Cosmos Empire." Yang Zishuan, Bailey Chen, and the other members also looked at Su Ru with gratitude. Just now, Su Ru did save them. It's not a big deal. Su Ru looked pale. It was apparent that it also consumed a lot of her energy just now. Third brother, if I were not there, you would also still have led us out of that mess. Su Ru looked at Jian Wushuang without any suspicion. Jian Wushuang smiled and then he looked around. Everybody, Jian Wushuang said in a low voice. These days, it is our cooperation that has led us here. As a leader, actually, I didn't lead you that much. Though I am ashamed, I have a presumptuous request. Hearing this, the 5 members around Jian Wushuang were all surprised as they looked at him. I request all of you to be my protectors, Jian Wushuang said directly. Protector. Yang Zixuan and other members were all amazed. Third brother, are you going to make a breakthrough? Su Ru looked at Jian Wushuang surprisingly. I fought with Jiu Yang just now and gained a few insights. It seems that I'm going to make a breakthrough. Jian Wushuang smiled with gratification. Finally, he was going to make a breakthrough. It was known that he had waited for this day for a long time. Since combining 3 sword essences in the selection battle, he had met a huge bottleneck in improving his strength. Although he tried many times to break through the bottleneck, he failed. From the beginning of Eastermist hunting to now, with the continuing battles and slaughter, the geniuses from other dynasties and even the geniuses in his team all made a breakthrough in their strength. People like Yang Zixuan and Feng Yuqian had made even greater improvements in their strength. How about Jian Wushuang? From the beginning to now, he had made no progress. It was not because Jian Wushuang was not talented enough, but rather because the bottleneck interfering with him was too huge. The bottleneck stopped him from making any progress. Once he broke through the bottleneck, his strength would reach a new and prominent level. Now, the breakthrough he longed was coming. That's so great. Ha ha, Jian Wushuang, are you going to make a breakthrough? Finally, you are going to make a breakthrough? Yang Zixuan, Su Ru, Bailey Chen, Feng Yuqian, and Mu Yingying were all surprised. They knew Jian Wushuang's strength well and they all knew how amazingly talented he was. Before the breakthrough, Jian Wushuang's battle strength was far beyond theirs and he also ranked top among the geniuses of the 12 dynasties. Once he made the breakthrough, his strength would reach new and prominent heights. Everybody, I promise, Jian Wushuang said confidently, while looking at his team members. I request you to be my protectors, and after the breakthrough, I will lead you to sweep over the 12 northwestern dynasties and create a brand new legend. Chapter 202, Fight to the Death. What Jian Wushuang said completely exhilarated his present comrades. Sweeping over the 12 northwestern dynasties and creating a new legend. But what was a legend? A small dynasty making its way upstream and destroying the middle-sized empires or even the 2 large empires, this was supposed to be a legend. Now Jian Wushuang said that he wanted to lead them to create a new legend. How confident of him to say that I believe you. Su Ru solemnly looked at Jian Wushuang without any doubts in her eyes. Yang Zixuan looked at Jian Wushuang as a smile slowly grew on his cold face. Bailey Chen, Feng Yuqian, and Mu Yingying smiled as well after they glanced at each other. Their smiles were full of expectations. After a while, Jian Wushuang sat down on the field with his legs crossed. He closed his eyes, and then engaged himself in the breakthrough. Yang Zixuan, Su Ru, and the other 3 comrades stationed themselves around him quietly. They had to ensure that nobody disturbed Jian Wushuang until he completed the breakthrough. By then, geniuses of the Cosmos Empire were quietly waiting in the jungle, which was not far from Jian Wushuang and his comrades. Among them, there was a black-robed woman trying her utmost to hatch an insect. Soon after, the hatching was complete and a winged insect emerged in people's visions. Done, the black-robed woman held her head up and said, "Is it finally done?" Ling Shuiyu smiled coldly and said, "Then lead the way." The black-robed woman nodded, and then everybody followed behind the insect and walked directly toward where Jian Wushuang and his comrades were. This was seen by the monarchs of the 12 dynasties and the experts of the old sects, who were levitating above the void. Blood armor bug? It seems that the Cosmos Empire have targeted the young men of the Qianzhong dynasty. It's unbelievable that they raised a blood armor bug. To raise a bug like that, they need to feed it their own blood since its birth. The geniuses in the Cosmos Empire seem a motley crew. With the blood armor bug leading the way, the group from the Cosmos Empire can find the group from the Qianzhong dynasty soon. This fight may leave Qianzong dynasty with no chance to even struggle. Exactly. After all, Ling Shuiyue is in the group. Even if a genius of the Qianzong dynasty was from the same place, he would only be able to barely survive when confronting Ling Shuiyu. Even when trying their utmost, Ling Shuiyu is an exceptional genius who is ranked second place on the standings. He is a monster. Meng Wuqian, who is ranked first on the standings, is also a monster. Their strengths are far more powerful than those of other geniuses. Those top geniuses were casually talking. All of them believed that the Qianzong dynasty had no chance to win this time. Even Di was now worried as he frowned. He was unwilling to retreat, but he knew that their group might have no way to resist the enemies, because the group from the Cosmos Empire gathered their top geniuses and even Ling Shuiyu was with them as well. The outcome, then, would be Jian Wushuang's group being killed. Look at the young man called Jian Wushuang. He is sitting on the field while the geniuses from the Cosmos Empire are approaching. It seems he is comprehending something. An expert from an old sect suddenly said. Oh. The other experts looked toward Jian Wushuang as well. Ha ha, he is. He has not achieved comprehension until now. It's too late. The geniuses from the Cosmos Empire will confront them in a while. At this point, even if he has a breakthrough in his strength, the result won't change. The experts from the old sects were talking and laughing. In the first day of the grabbing battle, Jian Wushuang attracted the eyes of the experts from the old sects. This was mostly because he was young, as well as the fact that he had incredible strength. However, as a few days passed, Jian Wushuang made no progress, which made them completely lose interest in him. Even though it seemed that Jian Wushuang had been comprehending something, how much he could improve himself now. The experts from the Cosmos Empire would arrive soon and, by then, they would outclass Jian Wushuang and his companions. HMPH, a good-for-nothing from a small empire. Mo Lingtian totally ignored Jian Wushuang. The only person he was interested in was Ling Shuiyu. In the blank field center of a lush jungle in Sky Valley, Yang Zixuan, Su Ru, and the other comrades were maintaining sharp vigilance, but they were disrupted by successive whoosh sounds. With the sounds of a few sharp winds, several figures with violent breath instantly appeared in front of them. Everybody from the Qianzong dynasty, here we meet again, Jiu Yang said with a smile. Seeing that the geniuses from the Cosmos Empire appeared in front of them again, Yang Zixuan's and his comrades' faces instantly darkened. By then, they already noticed the young man who was standing ahead and carrying a blood sword on his back. He looked icy, and his glance was fixed on Jian Wushuang and his comrades. Ling Shuiyu. It's him. The monster ranked second place on the rankings. Yang Zixuan's and the other four comrades' faces darkened further. It should be known that the alliance between the two groups of Jiu Yang and Zhong Kong had left them with no chance to stand against them. Worse still, the two groups arrived simultaneously, together with the well-known monster Ling Shuiyu. How was it possible for them to resist? What we should do? Should we just escape? Mu Yingying couldn't help but ask. No, we shouldn't, Su Ru directly shook her head and said. It's the crucial moment for Wushuang to complete his breakthrough. We can't let anybody disturb him. Otherwise, he won't be able to break through. What's worse is that he will turn berserk. We can't escape, then we have to fight to the death. Bailey Chen said coldly. There's no other choice except to fight, Yang Zixuan said flatly. Not soon after he had spoken, golden spiritual power surged from his body. A horrible breath suddenly burst out. Ha ha, high heaven technique. Seeing the golden spiritual power surging around Yang Zixuan's body, Ling Shuiyu looked excited. He instantly bounded up and directly levitated towards Yang Zixuan. I will take care of Yang Tian. You guys handle the rest. Hearing what Ling Shuiyu said, Jiu Yang and Zhong Kong frowned. However, they did not dare to violate Ling Shuiyu's instruction. So each led a group and then directly glided towards Su Ru and her comrades. Go to hell. Jiu Yang fiercely hacked his giant axe, which seemed to be able to split through the sky and earth. Zhong Kong held a long spear in his hand. The long spear was dark and violently pierced through the void like an awl. By then, the remaining geniuses from the Cosmos Empire each aimed at an enemy as well. Everybody was trying their utmost. Stop them from moving close to Wushuang, Su Ru snarled. A vast breath could be seen instantly raising up from her body, followed by the aquamarine torrent surging out. The torrent was even stronger than before. The aquamarine torrent filled the entire sky and earth, covering all geniuses from the Cosmos Empire. Subsequently, several aquamarine long spears appeared in the aquamarine torrent. Here we are again. This lady is really hard to deal with. Be careful, the power from these spears is more powerful than the sharp barbs from before. Chapter 203, Breakthrough. 4 sword essences were combined. Exceptional gold core realm. Facing the fierce attacks from the long spear, the geniuses from the Cosmos Empire were hastily trying to stop and resist it, including Jiu Yang and Zhong Kong. At the same time, Bailey Chen, Feng Yuqian, and Mu Yingying directly glided out, with a slightly frenzied glistening in their eyes. Boom! The terrible thundering sounds were suddenly heard in the void. Yang Zishuan had already engaged himself in a confrontation with Ling Xueyu. Rumble the energy waves were violently rolling. However, when the waves were about close in on Jian Wushuang, they were stopped by an aquamarine torrent. The confrontation between the geniuses from the Qianzong dynasty and the Cosmos Empire was extremely fierce as soon as it began. Yang Zishuan directly engaged himself in the slaughter with Ling Xueyu. Ling Xueyu was called a monster. Sure enough, his strength was stronger than the geniuses from other dynasties. Even Jiu Yang, who was ranked 3rd place on the standings, was not his match. However, having broken through to the half-step yin-yang realm, Yang Zishuan greatly enhanced his strength. In addition, he cultivated the high heaven technique. Once he fully displayed this technique, the heavenly qi would transform his strength to be extremely overwhelming. Thus, Yang Zishuan was absolutely powerful enough to engage in a fierce fight with Ling Xueyu. As for the other geniuses of the Cosmos Empire, they already engaged themselves in the fight with Su Ru and her other 3 comrades. With the monstrous aura, Su Ru displayed Aquamarine Torrent one more time. Additionally, Bailey Chen and the other 2 comrades were around supporting her. As a result, they successfully resisted the attack from the Cosmos Empire geniuses in a short time. It seemed that the situation in the battlefield remained a stalemate, for nobody was willing to give up. But the truth was that the geniuses of the Qianzong dynasty could not maintain this for a long time. Everybody was aware of this fact. Even though Yang Zishuan could confront Ling Xueyu, he was barely making it. Ling Xueyu had yet to display his full power, yet he already held the advantage. Eventually, Yang Zishuan would be defeated. Su Ru was in the same situation. It was not easy for her to display Aquamarine Torrent, so she could not maintain herself for a long time either. But Jian Wushuang knew nothing about it. At this moment, his eyes were closed and he completely engaged himself in his breakthrough. 4 sword essences could be seen slowly rising up around his body. Yang Zishuan and his other comrades were clear that Jian Wushuang had almost broken through. They thought the breakthrough was just in cultivation of spiritual power, which was simply from the profound gold core realm to the exceptional gold core realm. But in fact, the breakthrough Jian Wushuang was experiencing was not what they had thought. It was a breakthrough in sword essence. By now, Jian Wushuang activated the 4 sword essences that he already comprehended. Among the 4 sword essences, 3 were combined long ago, which were the sword essence of Gale, sword essence of Raging Fire, and sword essence of the Water Drop. The only one that he could not combine was the sword essence of Earth. The sword essence of Earth was the earliest and the finest one that Jian Wushuang comprehended among the 4 sword essences. However, Jian Wushuang was unable to combine it with the other 3 sword essences ever since he had comprehended it. But he received a chance to break through during the fight between him and Jiu Yang a while ago. The chance could make the sword essence of Earth combine with the other 3 sword essences. At this moment, the sword essence of Earth and the other 3 sword essences converged. Within seconds, the 4 sword essences had completely merged. Thereafter, Jian Wushuang had fully merged and comprehended the 4 sword essences. The sword essence of Earth, the sword essence of Raging Fire, the sword essence of the Water Drop, and the sword essence of Gale. The 4 sword essences were perfectly combined. A combination of 4 sword essences. At the right moment when the 4 sword essences combined together, a shock echoed throughout Jian Wushuang's body. In the past several months, His cultivation of spiritual power was not activated at all, neither had it been enhanced. But now, the power was suddenly and fiercely activated as Jian Wushuang completed his breakthrough. Originally, he was at the peak of the profound gold core realm, but now he directly achieved the exceptional gold core realm. The whole process happened naturally. Once the sword essence broke through, the cultivation of spiritual power broke through as well. After the breakthrough was over, Jian Wushuang suddenly opened his eyes, burning with rage. On the battlefield, the geniuses were still fiercely fighting. Su Ru's face had turned pale and dubious already, but she did not give up. She was exerting her utmost strength to manipulate Aquamarine Torrent and block Jiu Yang and his comrades. Bailey Chen, Feng Yuqian, and Mu Yingying were the same. They had already suffered terrible injuries, but they were still risking their lives in resistance. Ha ha, the power of the torrent has been greatly weakened. This lady is about to surrender. Let's defeat the torrent together. Jiu Yang laughed as he violently hacked the giant axe towards Su Ru. The giant axe could activate a huge thunderbolt, and now the strength landed directly on Aquamarine Torrent. In no time, the torrent retreated. Having spurted blood from her mouth, Su Ru's consciousness began to waver and her vision became blurry. However, she did not forget her mission. I can't let anybody get close to the third brother. Nobody is allowed to. She muttered. W.A. Su Ru spurted blood one more time. By then, her breath was barely perceptible. At the same time, the power for Aquamarine Torrent was greatly weakened. Su Ru struggled to hold up her head. She wanted to fight again, but the slight patting on her shoulder stopped her. She was shocked and naturally turned around. What she saw was Jian Wushuang, who was standing behind her with a grateful smile on his face. Seeing this, Su Ru was happy and then she smiled as well. Wushuang, you finally achieved a breakthrough. Su Ru's voice was extremely weak. Soon after she uttered those words, she closed her eyes and her limp body fell to the side. Jian Wushuang was stunned, and then he immediately stepped forward and held Su Ru in his arms. At the same time, he took out several healing elixirs and helped Su Ru swallow them down. Having swallowed the elixirs down, Su Ru's breathing became more stable. Seeing this, Jian Wushuang felt relieved. Soon after, Jian Wushuang looked around. His eyes were sweeping over the battlefields and the geniuses on them. He first fixed his eyes on Bailey Chen, Feng Yuqian, and Mu Yingying. The three just engaged in a fierce fight, and now all were grievously injured. Their breathing was weak, but they did not pass out like Su Ru. They still had slight consciousness. Having noticed Jian Wushuang's eyes, the three struggled to hold their heads up and looked at him. Their eyes were filled with mixed emotions. Seeing the three, Jian Wushuang half closed his eyes and then he gave Xianxia a glance. The glance was enough for him to be stunned. There, flashing into Jian Wushuang's eyes, was Xianxia lying in a giant hole in the field center, with blood spewing out of his mouth. On his side, there was an arm. That was a severed arm. A severed arm that was just cut off by someone. One glance was enough for Jian Wushuang to recognize that the severed arm was Xianxia's. One of my second brother's arms was cut off. Seeing the broken arm, Jian Wushuang's body was shaking. Rumbling, his mind was wild with rage as if there were hundreds of millions of thunderbolt roaring. Jian Wushuang's eyes were coldly fixed on the experts from the Cosmos Empire in the front. Moments later, a monstrous, murderous intent fiercely burst out from his body. The murderous intent formed a sturdy roar, and in no time it flew to the ninth heaven. All of you have to die. Chapter 204. All of you have to die. All of you have to die. The roar was so loud that it resounded throughout the entire Sky Valley, causing the faces of the top experts from the Cosmos Empire to suddenly change. After gently putting Su Ru down on the ground, Jian Wushuang got up. With a sound of chew, the triple kill sword was already in his hand, and then he walked toward the geniuses of the Cosmos Empire in front of him, step by step. Third brother, Xianxia called. Jian Wushuang stopped and looked at Xianxia. A smile appeared on Xianxia's face, but it was rather miserable, and then he said, "Next, we will all rely on you." Okay. Jian Wushuang nodded slowly, and then he continued to walk forward. Every step he took was very slow. After stepping on the ground, he stepped into the void. The geniuses of the Cosmos Empire were shocked by his movement. Void walk? Yin-Yang Void Realm? No, he hasn't reached the Yin-Yang Void Realm yet. He is just in the exceptional Gold Core Realm. Should a man of the primordial Gold Core Realm be able to have a void walk? The geniuses of the Cosmos Empire were astonished. However, Jian Wushuang raised his eyes and looked at these geniuses. The first person his eyes locked onto was Ling Xueyu. "Is it you that chopped off my second brother's arm?" Jian Wushuang said in a cold voice devoid of emotion. "Yes, it was me. What do you want to do?" Ling Xueyu raised his mouth slightly as though he did not care about Jian Wushuang at all. He was proud and arrogant. Among the 12 dynasties participating in the Eastermost hunting, only Meng Wuqian from the Angel Empire had the qualifications for Ling Xueyu to care about him. As for others, he did not pay any attention to them. "Okay, it's you," Jian Wushuang said indifferently before he then stepped forward. Whoosh! Jian Wushuang's figure suddenly appeared beside Ling Xueyu within just a few moments. "You chopped off one of my second brother's arms, so it isn't too much to chop off your 2 arms to avenge him." Jian Wushuang's chilly voice sounded around Ling Xueyu's ears. At this moment, Ling Xueyu, who just had an evil smile on his face and was previously acting supercilious, suddenly widened his eyes. Lowering his head with difficulty, he discovered that a cold sword shadow had flashed through him, yet he had no idea when this happened. This sword shadow was extremely sharp, so as soon as it passed through him from both sides, his 2 arms were chopped off simultaneously. How could this be possible? Ling Xueyu was momentarily dumbstruck. He could not believe what happened. Who was he? He was Ling Xueyu. He was one of the 2 exceptional genius acknowledged by the public in this Eastermost hunting, but both of his arms were chopped off by a nobody from a small empire. Too fast. This sword shadow was too fast. It was so fast that before he could react, his 2 arms had already been chopped off. Jian Wushuang then clenched his left fist and directly punched forward. Bang! This fist struck heavily at Ling Xueyu's stomach. The power was so terrifying that it directly obliterated his dantian into powder. Puff! Lots of blood spilled from Ling Xueyu's mouth and his face instantly turned pale. My dantian, Ling Xueyu roared in a low voice with great pain, while fresh blood constantly spilled from his mouth. However, Jian Wushuang's hands stretched out to Ling Xueyu again. As his arms were chopped off and his dantian was destroyed by Jian Wushuang, he had no ability to offer any resistance or even struggle, thus Jian Wushuang picked him up by his throat. Then Jian Wushuang swung his arm and Ling Xueyu, just like a dead dog, was vigorously thrown onto the open space near Xianxia. Ling Xueyu's body fell onto the ground in front of Xianxia, which caused the earth to shake upon impact. "Second brother, it's up to you whether this guy should be cut into pieces or be dismembered." Jian Wushuang's cold voice sounded. At this moment, the whole battlefield was silent. Looking at Ling Xueyu, who was thrown on the ground like a dead dog without any battle strength, Xianxia took a deep breath and nodded at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang no longer paid any attention to Ling Xueyu, and his eyes turned to the 14 other geniuses of the Cosmos Empire. These 14 geniuses included Jiyu Yang and Zhong Kong, 2 of the top 10 peak experts on the standings. But at this moment, these 14 geniuses looked at Jian Wushuang as though they were staring at a demon they had never seen before. In their eyes, Ling Xueyu was at the level of monsters. However, he was easily destroyed by this guy in front of them in no time. How powerful was his strength? The Cosmos Empire is one of the 2 large empires among the 12 northwestern dynasties. Jian Wushuang looked at the 14 geniuses of the Cosmos Empire coldly. "I wonder what kind of scene that would be if the geniuses of your Cosmos Empire who participated in this Eastermost hunting were all to die in Sky Valley." Jian Wushuang smiled coldly and began to wave the triple kill sword in his hand. Idealistic form, the first move of the selfless sword technique. Although it was the same idealistic form, after Jian Wushuang combined the 4 sword essences with this move, its power was much stronger. Chuu. A cold and bright sword light directly swept out momentarily. Where this sword light traveled, there was silence. It seemed as though the time of the universe stopped at this moment. The moment these 14 geniuses of the Cosmos Empire saw the sword light, their faces changed greatly, and they tried to escape from the sweeping of this sword move, but before long they found their speed was too slow. Compared with the cold and shining sword move, they were vastly slower. They were directly pierced through by the sword light before they had the chance to lift up the weapons to resist. Kai! 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 The sound of the sword piercing into bodies rang one by one, and altogether there were 14. The 14 geniuses of the Cosmos Empire still stood there, but they were at a loss, with eyes full of horror and despair. Then pang! 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 14 bodies simultaneously fell onto the ground powerlessly. 14 geniuses of the Cosmos Empire, who could be regarded as the top talents by the public, had been killed with one sword move. Quiet. The silence was akin to death in the earth and heavens. Even Jian Wushuang's teammates, including Bailey Chen, Feng Yuqian, and Mu Yingying, who still had consciousness, were greatly shocked by what had happened in front of them. As for Yang Zishuan, his expression was still extremely indifferent. After Jian Wushuang killed all 14 geniuses of the Cosmos Empire, he did not stop his actions, and his cold eyes turned to a forest not far from him. After watching us for such a long time, it's time to reveal yourselves. As soon as he finished uttering those words, Jian Wushuang lifted his arm and hacked his sword toward the forest. With the flash of the sword light, tens of huge trees fell forthwith onto the ground, and then figures appeared one by one. With a scarlet-robed youth as their head, these figures' breaths were uncommon. However, no matter whether it was the scarlet-robed youth or the others, they all looked at Jian Wushuang with great fear. Immortals killing empire? Seeing these figures, Jian Wushuang smiled coldly. The geniuses of the Cosmos Empire have all died, and I don't mind erasing your immortals killing empire from this battle for points. Chapter 205, Invincibility. Jian Wushuang said in a cold voice. Upon hearing this, the group of geniuses from the immortals killing empire, who had hidden in the dark, became awfully frightened. His words struck terror and shock into their hearts. They had never thought that they would be afraid of a genius from a small empire to such an extent. However, they had reasons to be terrified. After all, having arrived here early and then hiding in the dark, they had witnessed what just happened. They saw Jian Wushuang cut off Ling Shuiyu's 2 arms with a single stroke. They also witnessed Jian Wushuang strike a blow that killed 14 top geniuses of the Cosmos Empire, without giving his opponents the opportunity to fight back. The geniuses of the Cosmos Empire were as strong as those of the Immortals killing empire. Since he could kill the former with only one stroke, Jian Wushuang could definitely kill the latter. They now regretted passing by this place. You! The scarlet-robed youth, who led the other geniuses of the Immortals killing empire, suddenly spoke. The youth carried a blood-red saber on his back, with a faint killing intent between his eyebrows and a roaring aura around his body. The youth was called Meng Wuqian. He and Ling Shuiyu were known as the 2 exceptional geniuses in the easternmost hunting. Being ranked number 1 in the standings, he was stronger than Ling Shuiyu. We're just passing through here. There's no conflict between our Immortals killing empire and your team, so you don't have to kill all of us, right? Meng Wuqian stuck out his tongue to lick his lips, staring at Jian Wushuang. He put nothing in his eyes. He was number 1 on the standings of easternmost hunting. None of the geniuses was his match in the 12 northwestern dynasties. At this moment, Jian Wushuang, who was standing in front of him, did not even move, yet he made him feel an unprecedented pressure with his cold stare. The pressure was even greater than what Meng Wuqian had felt when facing an expert at the peak of the Yin Void realm. Jian Wushuang squinted at Meng Wuqian but immediately nodded. You're right. I don't have to kill all of you, so, all of you give me your armlets, and I'll let you go. Give our armlets. The expressions of the geniuses of the Immortals killing empire suddenly changed. Armlets represented points. The aim of this battle in Sky Valley was to earn points. Now all of them would give their points to Jian Wushuang. The geniuses of the Immortals killing empire were somewhat reluctant, but they acquiesced with a tight smile when thinking about how Jian Wushuang had killed 14 geniuses of the Cosmos Empire with one stroke. Jian Wushuang. Meng Wuqian looked serious. He had seen the standings before, so he knew Jian Wushuang. I admit that you're very strong, at least much stronger than me, Meng Wuqian said in a low voice. But it's not my style to give away my points without a fight. Anyway, I will be convinced as long as you fight with me and defeat me. Meng Wuqian then ignored the surprised expressions of the onlookers from the Immortals Killing Empire. He drew out his blood-red saber and a powerful aura gushed out from his body. Let's fight. With a loud cry, Meng Wuqian directly lifted up his saber mixed with raging fire, gale, and destruction essence realm. The last realm seemed to be able to destroy everything. Meng Wuqian's spiritual power reached its peak at this moment. He launched an attack with his saber. Boom! In the blink of an eye, the air ahead of him was cleft in two. The heaven and the earth shook and everything shivered. A huge flash of the saber shadow instantly swept out. The stroke seemed to tear heaven and earth. The onlookers of the Immortals Killing Empire looked frightened when seeing the saber shadow. Meanwhile, they felt fortunate that they were not the target. Otherwise, they would have died under the streak of the blade light. However, faced with the terrifying and dazzling blade light, Jian Wushuang was still calm. While slowly raising his head and staring at the streak of light coming toward him, Jian Wushuang casually struck a blow with his sword. The casual stroke did not display any swordsmanship, but there was a streak of sword light coming out. The streak of sword light was a perfect combination of 4 kinds of sword essence: earth, raging fire, water drop, and gale. Shua! With a sudden faint sound, in the brilliant streak of blade light appeared a crack. It was a cold streak of the sword shadow. The streak of the sword shadow completely penetrated the blade light as soon as the two of them collided. Then the sword shadow continued to move forward. In the blink of an eye, it arrived at Meng Wuqian. Chew! The cold sword shadow was suspended half of a centimeter away from Meng Wuqian. Jian Wushuang lifted the long sword up and pressed the sword shadow against Meng Wuqian. Once he used more strength, the sword edge could easily pierce through Meng Wuqian's throat. Grunt! Meng Wuqian swallowed his saliva with a blank look. The other geniuses of the Immortals Killing Empire sucked in a breath of cold air momentarily. With a stroke, Jian Wushuang had cut off Ling Shuiyu's 2 arms and killed 14 geniuses of the Cosmos Empire. Now, it was also another single stroke, an ordinary stroke that Meng Wuqian had executed his strongest unique move to fight against, with full power. The stroke obviously displayed no swordsmanship. But still, he was outclassed and defeated by Jian Wushuang with that stroke. There was a huge gap between them. You lost. Jian Wushuang coldly stared at Meng Wuqian. He did not want to kill Meng Wuqian directly because he thought Meng Wuqian had a good character. Meng Wuqian seemed to be somewhat arrogant, but he hid his conceit and was not as supercilious as Ling Shuiyu. I lost, Meng Wuqian said with a rueful smile. Then he gave an interspatial ring to Jian Wushuang. All the armlets I've got are in this interspatial ring. Meng Wuqian spoke. After he accepted it, Jian Wushuang glanced at the other geniuses of the Immortals Killing Empire. All of them were scared and took out all their armlets without hesitation. Here are all of our armlets. Here you are. These geniuses were still quite frightened. Jian Wushuang nodded and said, leave all your armlets and then you can go. All the geniuses of the Immortals Killing Empire, including Meng Wuqian, had to leave helplessly despite their reluctance. And with that shattering of the mirror formation, we conclude Chapter 205. Wushuang has overcome the first line of defense, but the Divine Sovereign has finally realized that sending generals isn't enough. The Sovereign has issued a heavenly execution order, meaning every bounty hunter and rogue master in the higher realms is now converging on Wushuang's position. He's not just fighting an army anymore, he's fighting the entire world. Join us next time for chapters 206 through 210, as Wushuang enters the Sea of Stars and encounters a secret rebel organization that has been waiting for the return of the Sword God. Thank you for listening to Panda Audiobooks. If you're excited for the rebel arc, hit that like button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell.